Today we are discussing lies about Paraguay, which is a place that has become fairly popular, especially on the internet over the last little while. And we want to correct a bunch of the things that people are saying out there and people are believing that are sort of deceptive and frankly could get you into a bunch of trouble. And so I'm going to cover with you today the things that are great about Paraguay, where Paraguay might be perfectly useful for you, what is absolutely not that a bunch of people are representing, and as a result, based on your situation, whether it is a good solution for you. So let's dive in. If you haven't been here before, I am Michael. I am from Offshore Citizen. We are international tax and relocation specialists, so we help you to figure out what is the best legal solution for you to optimize your global tax as much as possible. We specialize in all sorts of hard to find, little nuanced solutions that domestic tax attorneys and accountants are not familiar with. We are very jurisdiction agnostic, so there is no preferred place. It's all about what is best for you and your situation. And so if those things sound interesting to you, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosman. There's a link in the description below, or you can send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so Paraguay. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Paraguay, a small country in South America. It is pretty famous for a fairly tax-advantaged opportunity. So they have a territorial tax system, and they have a flat 10% tax rate. So even if you're in the tax system, it's pretty good. And because of the fact that you have the territorial tax system, a lot of people have an ability to tax plan around it. In particular, one of the things that gets narrated a lot is you can get residency in Paraguay and you can have no stay requirements. So essentially you can go and you can get an initial 2-year residency permit, during which time you basically have no stay requirements. Once you get there, then you can go back and you can get permanent residency, and then essentially have very little in terms of actual requirements to maintain it from there on out. You have to come back a little bit to renew, but it's very, very minimal. It's a fairly easy process to do. It's not that expensive. And so as a result, off you go. And it's certainly something that we have various different clients who have gone and lived there, as well as have gone and gotten set up with residency. So certainly we've helped people along those lines in the past. This being said, what is it that is the complete and utter nonsense that people tend to believe or are pitching about this? It basically comes down to this idea of having tax residency and having no stay requirements. So I've done a bunch of videos in the past where I've talked about some of the intricacies and nuances of tax residency, and it is a deeply misunderstood topic. People tend to believe the exact opposite of what they should believe, which is they are obsessed with tax residency. You should be obsessed with tax non-residency, okay? Very, very important distinction, but like quite subtle. So you can check out some videos we've done on that in the past. But for your purposes, what's the key thing here? People go out and they think, oh, I need to get a tax residency somewhere. Where can I go that I can get a tax residency that doesn't require me to spend much time? Ideally, no time. And so you've got places like Cyprus where you can be tax resident there if you're only 60 days a year there, UAE where you can be 90 days a year there and get tax residency. There's a few other ones that are fairly close, but certainly Paraguay just dominates in the ability that you can get tax residency spending no time there. And so a bunch of people think, oh, this is this low, essentially no tax for you situation. You just don't spend any time there, you have no local income, and you're tax resident, and wonderful, right? The issue is that does absolutely zero for basically anyone where it would matter. So the issue here is that just because you have tax residency in one country doesn't make you non-tax resident in another country. So I have some people who I've done business with and known, and we do a variety of different stuff, helping people with residencies, etc. But they're not tax experts. And so one day I was chatting with them and they told me, oh yeah, you know, we're getting these people, they can have this tax residency in Paraguay and they don't pay tax. And I'm like, yeah, but that does zero for them if they're living in some country where there is tax. And if they enter into the system somewhere else, if you are trying to get out of a particular country, it does not particularly help you. So the issue is, all right, number one, Paraguay doesn't have much in the way of tax treaties. So if you're coming from, you know, say for example, Australia or New Zealand or something like that, there's no tax treaties. And so there's nothing that's protecting you in that regard, even if they were to accept it. Second of all, The countries look at substance, okay? This is like a very common thing in law. You look at substance over form. And if the substance is that you actually don't have your home there, if you don't actually live there, which is kind of their concept of tax residency, then they don't particularly care that you have a piece of paper saying you have tax residency there. You're obviously not tax resident there for their purposes, etc. And even if you were, you still would fall into their rules. So if, for example, you were coming from UK and in order to basically be out of UK to qualify for something called the statutory residency test, if you're a UK resident and you have this kind of arriving, departing concept, you have to basically be out for, in most circumstances, basically all the year minus 90 days. That's kind of like the most permissive thing. There's a couple little exceptions to that, but loosely that's the case. And so say you were like, oh great, I have my Paraguayan tax residency, so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna spend 5 months a year in UK. Doesn't matter, you're taxable in UK. Maybe you say, all right, I'm coming from, looking at, I'm gonna spend a bunch of the year in Switzerland. Well, Switzerland has a very low standard. You can be tax resident in Switzerland with 90 days a year. So they go and hit you. Some countries it's 183 days. And so if you stay out of there for more than 183 days, hey, no problems. In other cases, it's 180. It depends country to country. But the point is, each country has their own standard. And so long as you go and enter into their standard, they're not going to care what you have in Paraguay. That is like the most important takeaway, okay? Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's ties, et cetera, et cetera. And so then the question becomes, well, somebody might say, well, I'm not going to spend the time there, right? I'm going to be a digital nomad. I'm going to be a perpetual traveler. I'm simply going to stay out of everybody's tax system. Okay, great. Then guess what? You don't need Paraguay tax residency because you're not entering into anybody's tax system. Now, there's certainly the question of maybe you have to get out of some country, but again, usually when you're talking about getting out of that country, and again, it varies by place, they usually want to see that you actually have a permanent home somewhere. So a good example, this is Australia. Australia, I've done a video specifically talking about how Australia has a very broad definition of tax residency and doesn't like to let you out of your tax residency. So you really have to go and live somewhere in order for Australia to consider that. Canada tends to be sort of the same. It partially depends whether you ever go back, and there's a bunch of different things like this. But the point is, if you want to benefit from the Paraguayan tax residency, you pretty much need to live there. Now, that's not to say that you can't get it. You can get it, absolutely. It's very easy to get. It's very easy to maintain. It's just, what is it doing for you, right? That's the real question. So people will sell this as something, and frankly, if you want to just have a backup, having a backup residency, it's a very easy residency to get. It's a very easy residency to maintain. That's perfectly fine. If you're looking for a place that you can put on bank applications, or you can put for something with cryptocurrency exchanges, then generally, okay, like that's a legitimate kind of use case for it. But those guys are going to look at, do you have an actual address in that country? And so, you can get one in Paraguay. That's certainly not the end of the world. Now, then you go and you say, well, what about the rest of my life? Am I going to establish ties somewhere? So I always say the most important thing is you want to start from the premise of where are you actually going to spend time? So don't start from the premise of what is the tax residency I can get where I can spend no time there? Because you're going to be somewhere. And so the question is, where are you going to be? Now, presumably you want to be somewhere you actually enjoy. And the question is, can you be somewhere that you actually enjoy and then optimize in that place so you don't have to worry about these other places? That's like the real question. Now, for some people who want to actually go to Paraguay and spend a bunch of time in Paraguay, perfectly wonderful. We have a variety of clients who have done that. We have some clients who have lived there long enough to get the citizenship. It's a fairly quick, I guess in the broad scale of things, citizenship if you actually live there. So it's attainable, but it's not attainable just by having the residency. You basically need to spend half a year there each year during the period of time that you're qualifying for the citizenship, and then, okay, you could potentially get it. It's an okay passport. It's not great, not terrible. Some people will comment that the banking there is really easy to open up. It's terrible banking. It's just absolutely awful. It's some of the worst banking that you can possibly have. So great, yes, can be easy to open an account. Once you have the account, good luck doing anything with it. So not really worth it in that regard. For the most part, when clients are moving down there, I tell them, okay, listen, you can have a local bank account to pay your local expenses, and otherwise have banking somewhere else that you can deal with. It is okay for if you want to open international bank accounts. What do I mean by that? So let's say you wanted to open accounts in Singapore, which is sort of the preeminent banking hub. So when people come to us who are looking for banking somewhere else, if we can, usually you're talking about Singapore, Switzerland, the US. These are like probably the top three. I've mentioned in some other videos, sometimes maybe you'll get to UAE, you'll get to Channel Islands, you'll get to Hong Kong, South Korea, you know, a handful of these others as sort of secondary. But the kind of preeminent three that foreigners can get relatively easily would be Singapore, US, Switzerland. Switzerland is a pretty high minimum. The US is quite accessible. You can have for, you know, essentially no money deposited. So that's good, provided you can visit there in person. If you can't visit in person, we can do some remote openings, but it's a little more nuanced. And then Singapore, usually you're talking about 200 to 250,000 minimum deposit. Now, the thing is, the Singapore banks can only sell investment products to people in places where they're licensed. And so they're typically not going to open for Americans. They're typically not going to open for oftentimes people in the EU and a few other areas. So there's sort of some restrictions. Some place like Paraguay is a perfectly workable option for some of those banks. So it's not a place that's absolutely terrible, that's going to restrict you a lot. It's not wonderful in the sense that they're, you know, rushing to open accounts for you. I find generally, if you're talking about Singapore banks, you're generally talking more about countries in Southeast Asia that they really easily understand, and it's very accessible. So if you live in Thailand, if you live in Malaysia, if you live in Indonesia, if you live in Philippines, places like this, very, very easy. So now, going back to the point, if you want to go and actually live in Paraguay, which most people don't like Paraguay, I will say that. Generally speaking, it is not their optimal quality of life. It's sort of considered boring, etc. But there are certain people who I know who actually do like it there, and this is totally a personal preference thing. So if you actually want to go and live there, yeah, it's very good for tax. It's very easy to get residency. As I said, it's not too bad to be able to make work from the standpoint of international banking. You don't want to bank locally. You can have international corporate structures that are very easy to optimize while being resident in Paraguay. And you can potentially get the citizenship in not too long. It's not that difficult if you're actually living there. So from that standpoint, hey, like if it's up to you, amazing, go there. But if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of like, oh, I'm getting a tax residency that I don't need to be there, I would mostly say you're wasting your time and money. You're better off for the most part focusing on where you're actually going to be. So hope that helps. If you have any questions about it, put it in the comments below. Check out some of our videos on the topic because I've just covered this sort of thing and the related halo of it quite a few times. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.